Hi, we are Alyssa,
Brittany.
Paul?
and we decided to do our capstone final presentation together, also the paper together. Um, Next slide. Oh. So the companies that we did the internships with is I did it with my work, the Department of Corrections.
And I did it with my work as well at the Boeing Company.
And then I did it with my work as well with the Pierce County Sheriff's Department.
So we all know that not all businesses are perfect and that internal and external problems do occur and are inevitable. The way that those businesses handle those situations and establish policies, processes, procedures to ensure that if a problem was to ever arise again, then they have written documentation for those employees to follow and abide by. And systems theory is described to be a numerous subsystem working together for a larger system. And so part one is problems. So for Department of Corrections, one of the biggest problems that we have dealt with in the past is with state audits and state audits pertaining to credit card information. So this past year, we were asked about particular transactions, and sometimes we could provide the information. Sometimes we couldn't because either the person no longer worked for the company or no longer worked for that specific unit. And because we could not hold people accountable for those flagged transactions, we needed to develop a system to help make the information readily available. And one of my duties for my internship was to create a database that tracked all the agency-owned credit cards. The database included the name of the card number, the card custodian, which is the card user, and the card approver, and then the limits on the card. When a person gets a credit card, they have to sign a written agreement with the expectations of the card. But with the pandemic and how most of the stuff used to be a paper document is now an electronic document, and so many of the practices that we've done with paper have been pushed to the back burner, and so not much of that carried over when we started doing everything electronically. And so by creating this database, it's an analytical tool because it allows for easier access to the information for research purposes, and it also assisted the operational scope of the financial unit by designing a process that could keep track of all the information, and the stakeholders that would use this specific database would be like the program administrators of the card and then the local business advisors of the agency that have any questions. It's all readily available in that database. And then we're going to go to slide 2. Problem costs. And so going along with the state audits, Washington State, specifically all state agencies, institutions, and departments get audited yearly to ensure that they follow federal and state regulations, laws, policies, and procedures. And that specific business can be subject to fines or violations if they're found not following those regulations, laws, policies, and procedures. And with experience doing audits on payments that go out for state audit violations, we pay around almost $100,000 to $1 million if we're found with a violation. In this case, with credit cards, this past year we found a few violations because we didn't have that updated information available for when the auditors were asking for it. And so in knowing that the violations were pertaining to not following proper policy, of not getting notified when someone leaves that agency or that unit, and then that just shows also the state auditors that we're not complying with appropriate procedures for credit cards specifically. the database that I created helps with consistency and reliability principles. And if the Department of Correction does not abide by those state and federal regulations, it could potentially risk the jobs of many state employees and also cause the Office of the Financial Management to take action to ensure rules are being followed by the agency. Part 3, decision making processes. And so another task that I got assigned for my internship was creating job aids. And so training has been a big issue since I've started working with the company, and we also face many turnovers which affect the training because our people promote up, which leaves vacancies. And this past year, 2 of our fiscal analysts, which are trainers of our unit, were vacant positions. And so it was a hassle to try to train the 6 other people that got hired on and dedicate time to them, along with closing and balancing like our year-end expenses for the agency. And so there was a discussion about creating a manual for new hires in our unit to have like step-by-step instructions on tasks about a team or about our team. But with having no time, we never got it done. And so when I met with my supervisor in regards to my internship, creating job aids was one of the tasks that he assigned for me. And so as I was saying, so the decision making process of creating job aids for each task that for each of the tasks that we do in our unit, and just having that step-by-step instructions for those new hires would just help alleviate a lot of the stress from if we didn't have the trainers in the unit, so the vacancies. And so this specific task was a analytical decision making approach because it required the ability to observe data that was given, which is the turnover and then the issue with training, and then making the decision to create job aids for each individual that so they have another form of resources when it comes to getting information in regards to training, and also when a physical trainer can't be with them.
All right, and for part 4, systems theory, my internship at Boeing, I was working as a shipside specialist, which in our area, I gather all the issues that are coming from different parts of the facility. One of the main problems that I was able to handle while I was doing my internship was we were getting defects at the end of the flow of the whole facility, meaning like from start one to the end, they weren't catching these issues, and at the very end, that's when they find out we have to do rework or we have to scrap these parts. So part of the systems theory for this issue was I had to collaborate with different support systems from engineering, planning, management, production, because we had to investigate on what the root cause was since it's being missed. The process is that we would have to go to each workshop and see how these materials are being handled, as well as interviewing the leads and also the workers who know the job, that understand the documentation. So systems theory is about collaborating and also having different functions within the organization working all together to complete a whole system, or a whole process, and to complete a successful product. So that's one of the big parts of my internship, and the process is really has to be in depth and thorough because the cost of these defects are substantial, because we get high discounts if we have defects from our consumers, which means that we get fines, as long as also with overtime, because we would have to pay all these workers to stay in or even come in during the weekends to just do all the work. So, yep, we can continue on to part 5. So for the decision outcomes for the issues that I've was able to work on during my internship at Boeing was to find the root cause of this problem. And with this, we can find either it could be a human error or an equipment error, because these are the higher possibility causes for this issue. For us to find the solution, it would be way cheaper, since if we can continuing on doing the rework, it would cost us more like 150 to 500,000 a month, instead of finding a new equipment or doing a short time of overtime for employees. It would only cost us maybe 500,000 for just 1 month. So these are the decision outcomes if these issues are solved, and it would be more ideal rather than doing all the rework and just keep continuing with the process and just letting it go. So those are the experiences and the issues that I witnessed during my time at Boeing.
Okay, so now I will be talking about cost saving and values as pertaining to my internship with Pierce County Sheriff's Department. So a major issue that we've been having to combat with the Sheriff's Department is the staffing crisis that was created primarily during the COVID pandemic, which led to us being up to 100 positions worth of vacancies, which led to the cost. So to kind of put it into perspective, starting pay for a deputy sheriff is $5,800 for a month, which equates to almost 70,000 per year. And so with this being 100 different vacancy positions, this is almost $7 million worth of salaries that should be going to employees working. But having to combat this created overtime positions. And so to cover an entire 24-hour period with just one deputy role, that would equate to $1,080 a day, which is almost $400,000 a year. And we would have anywhere from 1 to 7 positions needing to be covered throughout the entire 24-hour period, which obviously is a lot more money than how much it would cost to just fill those positions. So a big part of what my internship was focusing on different areas like recruiting and hiring processes to help push to fill those positions and help work on strategies for moving forward to where this won't become a problem again in the future. So by doing this, having to do additional recruiting events and working on long-term solutions so that we're not having to continuously do overtime to make up for these issues occurring. And then the amount of money being saved with the positions being filled also resulting in creating less overtime, but creating more people working on each shift to help interact with the public. So that way you're not having one person that's constantly having to work 60 to 80 hours a week and everyone's working their standard 40 hours. Now transition on to part 7. So a big part of for the Sheriff's Department, the business model and solutions is what I'll be discussing now. And a goal for them is the priority of working on balancing out all the problems that are occurring. Because, I mean, throughout all of this, the department's just hemorrhaging money, it's hemorrhaging resources, having to pull from special units, having to pull from our additional resources that we have, like property crimes and investigative positions and everything in that nature. So this led to setting up hiring incentives. So a big part of what I was assisting with is creating those additional incentives that allowed for patrol deputies to receive incentives if they got someone to become hired with the department, or incentives for laterals to come to our agency and to receive those additional bonuses to help combat the staffing crisis, which created in turn a ripple effect throughout the entire agency, trying to help combat all of these issues. So this is where recruiting and hiring became more of a priority, which in turn resulted from having to pull from other units to be able to do it in order to balance out the problems that were currently occurring. So it kind of led to every single unit having to lose a little bit in order to get us through the trying times and push through the situation that we're currently going through. So this meant taking individuals on ride-alongs. This meant getting to kind of expose more people to the agency and our job, get more people interested, and pulling into as many resources as I could to help kind of create long-term solutions to help with the agency's current issues. This meant me reaching out to coworkers and getting them to understand what we all need to do to help combat these issues, working together to create an environment that helps to relieve these problems that were occurring.